On what should have been just another ordinary day, my world came crashing down. My husband, Tmain, had filed for divorce, painting me as a failure, both as a mother and as a wife. He demanded everything: the house, the savings, even full custody of our daughter Zariah. The courtroom was silent except for the rustle of papers and the distant echoes of footsteps. But then, in the midst of this tense, suffocating atmosphere, I heard a small but firm voice, my 7-year-old daughter's voice, clear and unwavering. "Your Honor, can I show you something my mommy doesn't know?" The judge nodded slowly, curious. Zariah stepped forward with the innocence and courage only a child could possess, holding up her tablet. She pressed play and immediately the courtroom froze. The video illuminated every secret and truth, every small act of love and sacrifice I had poured into our lives. Evidence Tmain had tried to overlook, deny, and erase. Before the story truly unfolds, leave us a comment below telling us which city or state you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe so this channel can grow and continue to bring you more shocking and heart-stirring stories. That morning had started like any other, yet it carried the weight of countless quiet disappointments. I had been up since the first hint of dawn, moving silently through our sprawling home. The faint aroma of brewing coffee intertwined with the clean scent of detergent from the washing machine, which was humming away in the laundry nook. I moved through my chores like a ghost, careful not to disturb the fragile calm that Tmain demanded, though it had long since vanished from our lives. Over the years I had perfected the art of being invisible, of tiptoeing around him, of doing everything just so, in the vain hope of bringing back the husband I once knew. By 6 a.m., Tmain appeared on the stairs, impeccably dressed, his presence commanding yet cold. I set a steaming mug of black coffee and a plate of breakfast before him, the aroma rich and inviting, hoping somehow it would pierce through the growing distance between us. He took the coffee without a glance, eyes glued to his phone. "The coffee's a little bitter today," he said, his tone clipped, his expression unreadable. I whispered an apology, my voice barely above a murmur, but he didn't reply. He pushed the plate away and ate mechanically, leaving me hovering awkwardly, waiting for some spark of acknowledgement that never came. The silence was suffocating, thick enough to make the steam from the coffee freeze in the air. I couldn't remember the last time we had shared a meal filled with laughter. Perhaps it had been years, back when late nights at work didn't dominate his life and business trips didn't stretch endlessly across the calendar. "Is Zariah up?" he asked without looking up. "She's showering now, honey. She'll be down soon," I replied softly. Soon enough, the sound of tiny footsteps echoed down the stairs, bringing with them a fleeting sense of warmth. Zariah, dressed neatly in her private school uniform, ran into the kitchen with a radiant smile. "Good morning, Mommy and Daddy," she chimed, planting a quick kiss on my cheek before darting toward her father. For a brief moment, Tmain's stoic facade softened. He put down his phone and managed a forced smile. "Good morning, Princess. Finish your breakfast and Daddy will take you to school," he said, his voice carrying the faintest warmth. Zariah's eyes lit up. "Wow, I'm going with Daddy today," she exclaimed, joy practically radiating from her small frame. I exhaled a quiet sigh of relief. At least in her presence, he made the effort to be the father I knew he could be, even if the husband I loved had long disappeared. As soon as she finished, Tmain collected his briefcase, kissed Zariah on the forehead, and strode toward the front door. His departure was as cold and indifferent as ever. He passed me without a word, a glance, or a touch. Only the roar of his luxury car breaking away from the driveway marked his absence, leaving me alone in the vast, empty spaces of a home that had once been alive with love. The morning hours blurred as I moved through my routines, clearing the table, washing dishes, folding laundry, tidying every corner. I worked with quiet efficiency, hoping, perhaps foolishly, that perfection could somehow coax him back, or at least keep the ghosts of our happier days lingering in our home. But the man I once knew seemed gone forever. By noon, I went to pick Zariah up from school. These were the moments I cherished the most. The times when the world outside our home's walls could not intrude, when her laughter, chatter, and boundless energy could fill my heart. "Mommy, today I got 5 gold stars from the teacher. I answered all the questions right," she gushed, holding my hand tightly as we walked together. Her pride, her innocence, her sheer brilliance were the sunlight piercing through the storm of my life. And in that light I remembered why I fought, why I endured, and why, no matter the bitterness of the past or the cruelty of Tmain, I would always be Zariah's mother, her guide, her protector, and her unwavering source of love. The day of the courtroom battle arrived, and my stomach was a twisting storm of anxiety and fear. I could feel the weight of Tmain's accusations pressing down on me even before I entered the building. He had painted a picture of me as a neglectful mother and a failed wife, trying to convince the world that I was unworthy of my own daughter. But I knew the truth, the quiet hours I had spent caring for Zariah, the sacrifices I had made for our family, the love that had never faltered even in the coldest of days. As we stepped into the courtroom, the air felt thick and tense. Tmain strode in confidently, perfectly composed, while I felt my heart racing and my hands trembling. Zariah clutched my hand tightly, her small fingers wrapped around mine as if she were silently reassuring me that we were in this together. The judge called the court to order, and Tmain's lawyer began listing accusations, weaving a narrative designed to strip me of everything. My throat tightened with each word, but I forced myself to remain composed, to remember that the truth could not be hidden forever. Then, in the middle of the heated exchange, I heard Zariah's voice, clear, firm, and full of innocence. "Your Honor, can I show you something my mommy doesn't know?" The courtroom fell silent. All eyes turned toward her, curiosity and surprise written on every face. The judge nodded, intrigued. Zariah stepped forward with a tablet in her tiny hands, her expression a mix of determination and excitement. She pressed play. The video began, and instantly, every accusation Tmain had leveled against me started to crumble. Clips of me helping Zariah with her homework, cheering at her school events, tucking her in at night, and even quiet moments when I had worked late into the night to make sure our home was warm and welcoming. All of it played before the courtroom. My heart swelled with a mixture of pride and relief as the truth unfolded on the screen. Tmain's face went pale. His confident smirk faltered as the judge leaned forward, watching the evidence silently. The courtroom, once tense and hostile, was now filled with stunned whispers. My daughter, barely 7 years old, had done what no lawyer could have done. She had revealed the truth, the pure and undeniable love that defined our family. I squeezed Zariah's hand, tears pricking my eyes, overwhelmed with gratitude and admiration for her courage. For the first time in months, I felt a flicker of hope. No matter what Tmain had tried to claim, no matter how he had tried to distort reality, our love, our bond, and the quiet sacrifices I had made for my daughter could not be erased. In that moment, I realized that Zariah's bravery was more powerful than any courtroom argument, more persuasive than any lawyer's words. And as the judge's eyes softened, watching the evidence unfold, I knew that justice, real undeniable justice, was finally on our side. As the video continued to play, the courtroom's atmosphere shifted entirely. The murmurs grew louder. Tmain's confident composure had completely dissolved, replaced by a tense, uneasy silence. Every clip Zariah had recorded told a story that contradicted his claims. The bedtime stories I read to her, the lunches I packed meticulously each morning, the countless evenings I spent helping her with school projects, and even the nights I stayed awake when she was sick, holding her hand and whispering words of comfort until she fell asleep. The evidence wasn't just in my favor. It was undeniable proof of the life I had devoted entirely to our daughter. Tmain's lawyer tried to interject, stammering through objections, but the judge calmly silenced him with a raised hand. "This is not just testimony," the judge said, eyes fixed on the tablet screen. "This is clear evidence of a parent's love and dedication. I will take this into consideration." The courtroom felt suspended in time, as if every heartbeat echoed louder than the last. My chest tightened, but I remained still, letting Zariah's bravery speak for both of us. Zariah looked up at me, her eyes sparkling with innocence and determination. Even in her small frame, she radiated courage that Tmain could never match. It was as if she knew that the truth she held in her hands could change everything. The judge finally spoke, his voice steady but gentle. "I've seen enough. It is clear that this mother has consistently demonstrated care, responsibility, and unwavering commitment to her child. The custody of Zariah will remain with her mother. As for the property and other claims, we will review them carefully, but it is evident that the intentions presented here are far from just." A wave of relief washed over me. I exhaled a shaky breath, holding Zariah close as tears threatened to spill. She hugged me tightly, and for the first time in months, I felt safe, protected, and validated. Tmain sat frozen, disbelief etched across his face. The arrogance, the coldness, the manipulation. It all crumbled in the face of our truth, laid bare by the honesty and courage of a 7-year-old who loved her mother more than anything in the world. The courtroom had witnessed something far greater than legal arguments. It had witnessed the pure, unbreakable bond between a mother and her child, a bond no court, no accusation, and no manipulation could ever destroy. Walking out of the courtroom that day, hand in hand with Soraya, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Life had tested us, tried to strip away our family, and forced us into moments of fear and doubt, but we had emerged stronger. My daughter's courage had not only saved our family, it had reminded me that even in the darkest moments, love, honesty, and bravery could shine brighter than anything else. And as we stepped into the sunlight together, I knew that no force in the world could ever sever the bond between us again. The days following the courtroom victory were surreal, almost dreamlike. I returned home with Soraya, the weight of Tmain's accusations finally lifted from my shoulders. Yet the silence of our house felt different now. No longer heavy and oppressive, but peaceful, filled with a cautious hope. Soraya insisted on replaying the video for me again that evening, her tiny fingers swiping across the screen with pride. "Mommy, I showed them. I showed Daddy the truth," she exclaimed, eyes shining. I hugged her tightly, feeling a swell of emotion so strong it made my vision blur. "Yes, baby. You were so brave. You helped Mommy, and you helped our family." She giggled, her laughter a pure, unbroken note of joy that seemed to chase away every shadow of fear that had lingered in our home. The following weeks were filled with quiet victories. I worked on reclaiming my sense of self, exploring passions and interests I had long neglected, and building a life that no longer revolved around Tmain's approval or judgment. Soraya and I developed new routines, weekend art projects, evening walks, and storytelling sessions that stretched long into the night. I watched her grow in confidence, her natural curiosity and intelligence shining brighter every day. And each time she held my hand or leaned against me, I was reminded that the world could be cruel, but it could also be beautiful when we faced it together. One afternoon, as we were baking cookies in the kitchen, Soraya looked up at me with her wide, innocent eyes and asked, "Mommy, do you think Daddy will ever understand how much you love me?" I paused, considering how to answer without letting the anger and hurt spill out. I knelt beside her, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. "Some people are too lost in themselves to see what's right in front of them, sweetheart. But that doesn't matter anymore. What matters is that we know the truth and that we have each other. That's all that counts." Her face lit up with understanding, and she hugged me tightly, as if sealing a promise that we would never be torn apart again. And in that embrace, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace. From that day forward, I vowed never to shrink myself, never to allow fear or doubt to dictate my life, and never to let anyone's cruelty overshadow the bond one shared with Soraya. Together we built a new world, one where laughter replaced silence, love replaced fear, and hope replaced despair. And as I watched her run through the garden, sunlight glinting in her hair, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. Unshakable, unbreakable, and infinitely brave. Weeks passed, and though Tmain's presence in our lives had been minimized by the court's ruling, his shadow lingered in subtle, unsettling ways. I could sense his attempts to undermine our happiness. Messages that carried thinly veiled threats, phone calls that came at odd hours, and passive-aggressive visits intended to unsettle Soraya. Yet each time I reminded myself that we were no longer powerless. Soraya's courage in the courtroom had not only defended her, it had fortified me, and together we were unshakable. One afternoon, as we were tidying up the living room, Soraya tugged at my sleeve, her small face serious yet determined. "Mommy," she said, "what if Daddy tries to take me away again?" Her voice trembled just slightly, though she was brave enough to ask. I knelt beside her, taking both her hands in mine, looking deeply into her eyes. "Sweetheart, nothing can take you away from me. We fought for our family, and the truth is on our side. He can try, but he cannot break what we have together. We are stronger than he is." Her eyes brightened, trust and love radiating from her small face. That evening, I decided it was time to confront the remnants of Tmain's intimidation. I drafted clear, firm boundaries, documenting every interaction and ensuring that Zariah's safety and our peace were protected. When he arrived unexpectedly at our doorstep later that week, I stood my ground, holding Zariah close and speaking with a strength I had not known I possessed before. He looked taken aback, perhaps expecting fear or submission, but instead met the unwavering gaze of a mother who had already survived the worst. For the first time in years, I saw hesitation flicker in his eyes, a crack in the armor of arrogance he had built around himself. Zariah clung to me, sensing my strength and drawing from it, and I realized that her courage had not only saved her, it had empowered me to reclaim my life completely. That night after Tmain left, Zariah and I sat together on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, sharing hot cocoa and whispers. "Mommy," she said softly, "I knew we'd be okay if we stayed brave." I kissed her forehead, tears glistening in my eyes. "Yes, baby, we are okay. And we will always be okay, because we have each other and nothing can change that." From that day on, our home became a sanctuary. Every room echoed with laughter, every meal shared with genuine warmth, and every bedtime filled with stories of courage, love, and triumph. The battle with Tmain had tested us, but it had also revealed an unbreakable truth: that the bond between a mother and her child, strengthened by love and honesty, could withstand any storm. And in Zariah's eyes I saw a reflection of that strength, a reminder that we had survived, we had won, and we would continue to flourish together, no matter what challenges life began to settle into a new rhythm. Yet a lingering unease reminded me that Tmain's presence could never be entirely erased. One crisp morning as Zariah and I were leaving for school, I noticed a sleek car idling at the end of our driveway, Tmain's unmistakable silhouette visible through the tinted windows. My pulse quickened, but I refused to show fear. This time I was ready. Zariah squeezed my hand tightly, her eyes wide but steady, and I knew she was drawing strength from the bond we had fought so hard to protect. Tmain stepped out, his expression a mixture of irritation and forced civility. "I just want to see my daughter," he said, his tone calm but his eyes sharp like a predator measuring its prey. I straightened, holding Zariah close, and met him without hesitation. "She's safe and she's happy. That's all that matters. If you wish to see her, it must be on my terms, not yours." His lips tightened into a thin line, and for the first time in years, I sensed uncertainty behind his confident facade. Over the next few days he tried to subtly manipulate situations, calling her school, showing up at events, sending messages that carried a hint of guilt or pressure. But every attempt failed. I documented everything, stayed calm and stood firm. Zariah witnessed every action and every response. "Mommy," she said one evening, "I think Daddy is finally seeing that we're not afraid." Her small voice was filled with both pride and curiosity. I hugged her tightly, realizing that the court victory and her bravery had grown into a shield, protecting us against any lingering threats. Then one afternoon Zariah came running into the kitchen, her school bag bouncing against her back. "Mommy, look what I made," she exclaimed, pulling out a handmade card. Inside were words she had written herself, delicate and honest. "Mommy is my hero. She never gives up. I love her forever." My chest tightened with emotion as I hugged her, tears spilling freely. That simple card encapsulated everything I had fought for. The love, the resilience, the victory that was ours and ours alone. Later that week, Tmain showed up at the house once more, attempting a confrontation that he thought would unsettle me. But I stood tall, Zariah by my side, and spoke clearly. "You will not manipulate us. You will not intimidate us. Your attempts to control our lives are over. We are free from your shadow, and we will not allow you to cast darkness over our home ever again." His face hardened, but I noticed a flicker of something new. Perhaps realization, perhaps defeat. He left without another word, and the tension that had hung over us for years began to lift. Zariah and I embraced in the living room, the sunlight spilling across our faces, illuminating the quiet triumph of our lives. That day I understood fully. It wasn't just the court ruling or the evidence she had shown. It was her courage, our love, and our refusal to be broken that had truly won. From that moment forward, every sunrise felt lighter, every evening calmer. Zariah and I celebrated our small victories, shared endless laughter, and cherished the freedom we had fought so hard to secure. We were no longer victims of circumstance or cruelty. We were survivors, warriors in our own right, and together, nothing could ever take away the unbreakable bond we had forged through fear, struggle, and unwavering love. The final confrontation came sooner than I expected. One late afternoon, Tmain showed up at the house unannounced, his face a mixture of anger, frustration, and something that looked dangerously like desperation. He had exhausted every tactic, threats, manipulation, and passive intimidation, but none of it had worked. And now, standing in our doorway, he realized that the fortress he had tried to break was unassailable. Zaraya clung to my side, her small frame brimming with courage that belied her age. "Mommy," she whispered. "We're ready." I nodded, feeling the steady strength of her hand in mine, the anchor I needed to face whatever came next. Tmain started speaking, his voice rising, trying to assert control, but I cut him off with a calm authority I hadn't felt in years. "Enough, Tmain. You have no power here. You never did. Every attempt to control or scare us has failed, and it will continue to fail. Zaraya and I are free from your cruelty, and nothing you do can change that." His eyes flickered with disbelief, and then slowly he realized the truth: he had already lost. The courtroom ruling, the evidence, and most importantly, our unwavering love and courage had rendered his manipulations meaningless. For the first time, Tmain could not bully or charm his way into dominance. He left without another word, and the sound of the front door closing was almost musical in its finality, a symbolic ending to years of fear, control, and oppression. Zaraya turned to me, her eyes wide and shining. "Mommy, we did it. We're safe." I scooped her into my arms, holding her tightly as tears streamed down my face. "Yes, baby, we are safe. And we always will be, because we have each other." The relief was overwhelming, but so was the joy. The pure, unfiltered happiness that comes from surviving the storm and finally stepping into the light. That evening we celebrated quietly at home, baking cookies, telling stories, and laughing until our sides ached. For the first time in years, our home felt alive, warm, and safe. Not just a house, but a sanctuary built from love, courage, and resilience. Zaraya cuddled next to me as we watched the sunset from the living room window, her small hand holding mine as if sealing a promise for the future. Through all the trials, the accusations, and the fear, we had emerged victorious. Not because of courts or lawyers, but because of truth, love, and the unbreakable bond between a mother and her child. And in that bond I found a strength that would carry us forward. No fear, no threats, and no cruelty could ever touch us again. Together, Zaraya and I had rewritten our story, transforming pain into triumph, uncertainty into unwavering confidence, and darkness into light. And as I tucked Zaraya into bed that night, watching her peaceful face illuminated by the soft glow of the bedside lamp, I whispered a promise I knew I would never break. "No one will ever take you from me." One sunny morning, Zaraya ran ahead of me into the backyard, her laughter echoing through the open space like music. "Mommy, look. I planted flowers all by myself," she shouted, pointing to a small, vibrant patch she had carefully tended. My heart swelled with pride. Here was a child who had faced fear, witnessed conflict, and yet chose hope, courage, and creativity. I knelt beside her, brushing dirt from her small hands. "You did this all on your own? I'm so proud of you, baby," I said, hugging her tightly. She beamed, her smile a reminder that joy can flourish even after the darkest storms. Our days became filled with little rituals of happiness. We baked together, drew together, and spent long afternoons reading stories in the sunlight streaming through our living room windows. Zaraya's laughter became the soundtrack of our lives, her tiny triumphs and discoveries illuminating every corner of our home. And through it all, I realized something profound. The battles we had endured were not just about survival. They were about learning to live fully, boldly, and without fear. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sun dip below the horizon, Zaraya rested her head on my shoulder. "Mommy, do you think Daddy will ever change?" she asked softly. I held her close, feeling the steady rhythm of her small heart against mine. "Some people never learn, sweetheart," I said gently. "But it doesn't matter. We have each other, and that's all that counts. We have our love, our courage, and our home. Nothing can take that away." She smiled, snuggling closer, and I knew she understood. That real strength comes not from fighting others, but from protecting what you love and standing firm in truth. That night, I tucked her into bed, kissed her forehead, and whispered a promise I had kept through every trial. No one will ever break our family, baby. We are safe, and we are unstoppable together. And as the night deepened outside our windows, I knew that we had not only survived the storm, we had grown stronger because of it. Every challenge we faced had been a lesson in bravery. Every hardship a reminder that love, truth, and courage will always prevail. Together, Zariah and I had not just survived, we had truly triumphed. Months passed, and life gradually settled into a rhythm that felt both comforting and empowering. Zariah flourished, her confidence radiating in every smile, every word, every small act of kindness she extended to the world. School, friends, and hobbies filled her days, and she never stopped reminding me, in her innocent yet profound way, of the courage we had discovered together. Our home was no longer a place of quiet tension, but a sanctuary filled with warmth, laughter, and unshakable love. One afternoon, as we sat together at the kitchen table, Zariah looked up at me, her eyes bright and serious. "Mommy," she said, "do you think Daddy will ever understand how much you did for me?" I paused, letting her words sink in, then gently brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Some people never see what's right in front of them, baby," I said softly. "But it doesn't matter. What matters is that we know the truth. We know our love, our bond, and our strength. That's all that counts." She smiled, hugging me tightly, her tiny arms filled with conviction. That evening I reflected on the journey we had endured. The heartbreak, the court battles, the endless days of fear and uncertainty. Every moment of struggle had forged a bond between Zariah and me that was unbreakable. An armor of love and courage stronger than any challenge life could throw our way. Tmane's shadow no longer loomed over us. His attempts to intimidate or manipulate had been rendered powerless by the honesty, bravery, and resilience we had embraced. In the quiet moments of our home, I often watched Zariah play, her laughter like sunlight spilling into every corner, and I realized how far we had come. We had not only survived the storm, our hearts had grown stronger, our lives richer, and our love deeper than ever before. I whispered a quiet promise to myself and to her. No one would ever tear us apart, no one could diminish the bond we shared, and we would continue to live boldly, courageously, and fully. As night fell, Zariah curled up beside me, her head resting on my shoulder, and I held her close, feeling the steady beat of her heart against mine. "Mommy, we're unstoppable, right?" she murmured sleepily. I kissed her forehead, smiling through tears of relief and joy. "Yes, baby," I whispered. "We're unstoppable. Together, we can face anything." And in that quiet, profound moment, I understood that our story, though born from pain, struggle, and betrayal, had transformed into a story of triumph, courage, and unshakable love. For the first time in years, I felt completely free. Free from fear, free from doubt, and free to build a future with Zariah that was only ours. A future filled with laughter, hope, and the unbreakable certainty that we had survived, we had won, and nothing could ever take that away. The morning sun streamed through the curtains, filling our home with warmth and a sense of renewal. For the first time in years, there was no tension, no fear lurking behind closed doors. Only the quiet, powerful rhythm of life rebuilt on courage, love, and resilience. Zariah bounded into the kitchen, her school bag bouncing on her back, her laughter ringing like music. "Mommy, look what I drew today," she exclaimed, holding up a colorful, intricate drawing of our little family, all smiles and sunshine. I pulled her close, my heart swelling with pride. "It's beautiful, baby. Just like us." Life had become a tapestry of small victories, each one more meaningful than the last. The school awards, the evenings spent reading together, the weekends filled with spontaneous adventures, they were no longer ordinary moments. They were triumphs, proof of our perseverance and the strength of the bond that Tmane had tried, and failed, to destroy. Every glance at Zariah's beaming face reminded me that the love between a mother and child can withstand any storm, heal any wound, and overcome any obstacle. Then one evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Zariah leaned against me, her head resting on my shoulder. "Mommy," she said softly, "we're never afraid anymore, right?" I smiled, brushing her hair back from her face. "No, sweetheart. Never again. We fought for this, and now our home, our lives, and our hearts are safe. Nothing can take that away from us." She closed her eyes, a peaceful smile on her lips, and I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude, not just for the safety and happiness we had reclaimed, but for the courage she had shown, which had changed everything. That night, as I tucked her into bed and kissed her forehead, I realized something profound. Our story was no longer defined by fear, betrayal, or struggle. It was defined by strength, love, and the unshakable bond that had carried us through every dark hour. And in that realization, I knew we had emerged stronger, braver, and more united than ever. From that day forward, our home became a sanctuary of joy and hope. We laughed freely, dreamed boldly, and lived courageously, knowing that together we were unstoppable. Every challenge, every hardship, every trial had forged a connection between us that no one could ever break. Zariah's hand in mine was not just a symbol of love. It was a promise that no darkness, no deception, and no cruelty could ever touch us again. Weeks turned into months, and each day strengthened the bond between us. Zariah's confidence grew, her schoolwork flourished, and her laughter became the soundtrack of our lives. I felt a quiet pride in the life we had built. A life defined not by fear or struggle, but by triumph, love, and the unshakable knowledge that we could overcome anything together. One night, after tucking Zariah into bed, I lingered by her door, watching her sleep peacefully. The soft rhythm of her breathing was a reminder of everything we had fought for. I whispered to the shadows of the room, to the universe, and to myself, "We survived the storm, Zariah. We won. And nothing will ever take this from us." In that silence filled with love and promise, I knew the story of fear, manipulation, and struggle had ended. What remained was our story. A story of courage, resilience, and an unbreakable bond between mother and daughter, stronger than anything life could throw our way. The weeks that followed were nothing short of transformative. Our home, once a silent battlefield, now hummed with laughter, warmth, and the simple joy of living freely. Zariah's energy filled every corner, her imagination and curiosity turning mundane moments into adventures. She had grown into a little beacon of hope and courage, a reminder every day that love, truth, and resilience could overcome even the darkest challenges. One crisp morning, as we prepared for the day, Zariah bounded into the kitchen holding a small bouquet of wildflowers she had picked from the garden. "Mommy, these are for you," she said, pressing them into my hands with a grin. I knelt down, inhaling the sweet scent, my heart swelling with emotion. "Thank you, baby. You always know how to make my heart happy," I whispered, hugging her tightly. In that simple act, I realized how far we had come, from fear and uncertainty to a life overflowing with love and hope.